As the biology and infectivity was discussed in part 1, part 2 we will dive further into how this creature operates and what seems to be evidence of a more complex intelligence not noted by those found above ground. If you would like to see part 1, there should be a card up on screen, but for all those who have seen it, let's get to it. After the D-Class personnel had successfully made their way into Site C and destroyed anything that they found, their efforts culminated in a complete destruction of a center point, which was a fleshy sphere. Upon burning this sphere, there was a response by the humans turned 610 as they attacked the men and ended them. However, the creatures were not all that successful in saving what seems to be a conduit for instructions or even for their very lives. As mentioned in the L3 report, the destruction caused by the rapid collapse of Site C exploration attempt during SCP-610-L2 resulted in a series of unexpected events in Site A. As a strange spherical formation in Site C was burned and destroyed, the SCP-610 infected inhabiting Site A were recorded by aerial drones going into seizures and convulsions. The mobile 610 infected rapidly shriveled up and died along with all the flesh material spread across inanimate objects within the village. The mobile SCP-610s infected, who were able to essentially regain their footing, all proceeded to what appears to have formerly been an upper-class residence and entered the building. As the infected entered their dwelling, it suffered a foundational collapse, revealing the presence of a sinkhole beneath it. The size of the hole in relation to the structure above it posed an impossibility for an entire building to collapse, suggesting something within the hole applied force directly to the structure with the intent to pull it inside and expose the hole. The revealed hole is approximately large enough to accommodate 3 grown men standing shoulder to shoulder. Light sources applied by remote drones failed to penetrate further than 4 meters in depth into this hole. Objects dropped into the hole do not produce an impact sound, suggesting a bottom potentially more than about 1,000 meters down. This would obviously suggest that the spherical meat balloon was more than just your average 610 covering the ground and walls. Considering what we know about it pulsing and producing spores, it was either producing energy or receiving it. Now, I am partial to the idea of producing energy, much like how the marker in Dead Space receives the energy and then puts out a signal that changes those around it. The sphere appears to do something quite similar because after its destruction, the creatures, or at least the potentially weaker and immobile ones, will meet their end. This shows that the sphere is a colonizing structure, and without it, 610 cannot advance forward. Regardless of that, those that were strong enough to make it back down the hole would have presumably survived, and also, just as a side note for those using Freedom units, this hole is almost about a mile straight down. Upon what seems to have been the end of 610, 5 teams were sent into the area to conduct research. These teams were composed of scientists and armed personnel for protection. Upon moving closer to the opening of the hole, seismic activity began to pick up at a level as high as 2.3 on the Richter scale. Immediately after, a blast of 610 spores erupted from this hole. This seems to have been intentional as a protection method designed to infect any who got near. Luckily though, the scientists and security have been equipped with hazmat suits, so this led to no infections of the team members. Again though, the intelligence shown by 610 seems to be misunderstood, as when the spores didn't work, avian creatures arrived at the scene and began to attack the teams. They seemingly were suffering from an advanced stage of infection, but unlike the larger human infected, small arms fires were quite effective. Still, these avian creatures were quite sizable as they were able to pick up full-grown humans and drop them into the hole. For the rest, their heads would open up and they would clamp onto team members, causing injuries. All in all, 2 team members were KIA via hole drops, and 1 was injured in the crossfire. The injured staff was terminated upon discovery that his suit had been breached. The remaining team members still weren't done, however. A third and final attack would spell their undoing. As they were recovering from their last attack, L3 ends with this report. Before video and radio contact was lost with the remaining teams inside Site A second seismic event began to occur, starting out as a 1 to 1.5 range in scale. Attention was directed at the hole to prepare for a second assault. A second spore burst erupted from the hole during this rising seismic activity. At this point, the scales registered a 3 to 3.5 in force, and a new unseen SCP-610 entity began to emerge from the hole. The only footage captured of this creature depicts an engorged human head approximately 20 times larger than normal, pressing itself out of the hole with no discernible body. Video and radio contact were lost as seismic forces increased to 7 on the scale for 2 seconds, then abruptly ceased. Further aerial surveillance to Site A hole and area depict 0 activity and no traces of a research team or that there had ever actually even been one. All personnel and equipment are considered lost. Well, that's completely and utterly horrifying. Anyhow, this concludes the L3 report. With human life lost and no closer to understanding what's happening, the Foundation begins to realize, much like how the ogre has layers, the infection has many layers as well, which means careful planning is necessary to not needlessly risk human life. So they wise up and send in a drone in L4 where some light is shed on just how detrimental to humanity this infection is. Events regarding the discovery, research, and handling of SCP-610 SCP-610 rapidly degraded to a point where failsafe options were being considered. For over 1 hour, nothing further really happened at Site A following the loss of the research teams during the seismic events in SCP-610-L3, the subsequent contact with previously unseen SCP-610 lifeforms. With the absence of activity at Site A remote drone was dispatched and authorized in 2 parts. The first part would drop a remote relay device at the entrance of Site A sinkhole, and the second part would dispatch a drone into the hole directly to relay its data to a remote relay for transmission back to HQ. Drones on site were powered by solar energy with a battery maintaining a 4-hour charge. To spare you a word-for-word reading of Report L4, the helicopter drone was sent in to survey the tunnels and area to determine where, or even if, the source point was for this infection. Descending into the dark tunnels, the drone began to see that the deeper the central hole went, the more branches of smaller tunnels existed. Near the bottom, the walls were coated with the flesh of SCP-610, and extreme care was taken not to touch or disturb these walls. The drone was equipped with a machine gun of about 50 rounds of ammo, but this was more of a deterrent than for self-defense. Continuing through the tunnel, the drone stumbled across what was a deer, which was actually uninfected and secured by the tendrils of 610 material. Further down the tunnel, large lumps were found of infected humans lying on the ground, and still further in, an underground creek was making its way through the twisting tunnels, but no 610 cells seemed to be contaminating the groundwater. As the drone probed further into the tunnel, it was met with a split. Upon taking one over the other, the drone proceeded upwards for roughly 300 meters or about 1,000 feet before exiting a mountain tunnel. A scan was done and found that Site B had no life, whether it be human or SCP. But then we get to the important part of Report L4. Video feed becomes entirely clear for the final 2 minutes before feed is lost. Rushing up towards the drone from an area below is what appears to be a large human face stretched out to 20 times its proportions with no features save for those created by SCP-610 material. There are eye sockets but no eyes, a mouth but no teeth. The drone fires upon the rushing mass of SCP-610, but the bullets do not deter it. Impact points remaining visible for several seconds before closing over themselves. There is no room in the tunnel for the drone to take evasive action, and it is swallowed by the mass. Our SCP-610 is considered lost until 3 hours later when the feed inexplicably returns. Video feed from the drone appears to show a series of structures illuminated by 1 or 2 lights of the drone. The camera pans around without instructions from the remote relays or HQ, capturing a vast number of shambling entities within the area. SCP-610 material moves over the lenses of the drone, and video feed is permanently severed. The final and last report, L5, picks up with the approval from Central HQ for a complete manned assault and excursion of the tunnels beneath the Site A to get a real handle on the expansiveness of this infection. It seems that 610 is able to be contained and destroyed at this point, but it still remains a Keter class anomaly. See that? Keter. Told you I'd actually say it right next time. Man teams were lowered into the hole using a pulley system, and it was actually relatively clear. SCP-610 infection did not appear in the third pathway until approximately 3 kilometers in, and serious infection did not appear until 16 kilometers in. Even after the links traveled by the assault teams, no SCP-610 infectious lifeforms were encountered, and the fleshy material coating the cavern walls posed no real threat to the team. The most significant reports at this time were the increasing thickness of this material, suggesting a source, and the complete lack of SCP-610 contamination in the water. As a test, a sample of SCP-610 was cut away from the cavern wall and placed into the flow of the water. It exhibited no unusual reactions, but was quickly swept away by the current. With this much distance traveled, a buggy was requested to cover more ground and make it easier for the teams to descend even further. However, the teams would soon be met with opposition to their further exploratory measures. The buggy was navigated to the assault team encampment with no events en route. However, upon arrival and preparation to continue the exploration, the assault teams came under attack by a number of large SCP-610 infected lifeforms that emerged from an area ahead of them. Video recovered from the assault team cameras show that they were caught off guard as the 610 infected made no sound and were undetectable. On one film, for 1 or 2 seconds, it appears that some of these creatures are coming out of 610 materials on the wall, not emerging from them so much as being created by the material and then breaking away to act independently. During this assault, in an attempt to protect the buggy, members were lost to the water currents and contact with them was also lost. Contact was regained, however, and is recorded in the SCP-610-L6. The remainder of the assault team now consisted of 3 members armed with a single flame unit. Use of this unit to repel the assault proved vital as standard firearms did minimal damage to infected creatures. These infected creatures show minimal traits to associate them with any known form of life in the region, giving rise to the belief that they may have been spawned by SCP-610 infection itself as a form of defense. No further casualties were suffered during the raid, and the remaining members managed to eliminate all attacking infected, allowing them to continue the exploration with added orders orders to attempt to locate lost team members. A further 20 kilometers down this tunnel, the river separated from the tunnel pathway, and the team was instructed to abandon the recovery order given the inability to navigate the waters safely. A total time of passed before the remaining assault team reached the end of the tunnel. As the perimeter of the area now known as Site B, the team came under assault again from a smaller number of SCP-610 that were much larger in size. These infected appeared in the tunnel as if they were lying in wait for the approaching team. These creatures were dispatched using flame units, although all fuel for the unit was expended in this act. The assault team is now limited to standard weapons and short-range personal flame units. After the attack, all remaining members continued cautiously as they were awaiting another attack from 610. No attack would come, but instead they would stumble across a village of unknown age or origin. The village appears to be extremely old, with many of the structures looking fairly primitive. But then the team began to grasp the gravity of the situation. Surrounding all structures in the area is a depression in the ground filled with a substance resembling a liquefied form of SCP-610 fleshy materials. The pull moves as if acted upon by a minute and unseen force, rippling outward and invisible contact points and rolling in waves from unfelt winds. The team avoids the pull at all times and proceeds through the ruins slowly on stable foundations where possible, making the church their target area. Within the church are pews, as would be expected. However, there are only 4, one of them shattered, when the building could accommodate as many as 20. The 3 intact pews are arranged in a 2-1 formation facing a pulpit. There is no trace of dust on any surface, the entire area appearing to be immaculately clean. Given the location and believed age, this is very strange. Behind the pulpit is a hole in the floor exposing an area of SCP-610's pool beneath the building. The church and ruins appear to be uninhabited, and exploration of the church proper is uneventful until the clock tower bell tolls. This tolling triggers a shudder in the building, followed by human screams from the ceiling. Lights shown on the ceiling reveal a large mass of SCP-610 from which descend a series of 6 wooden circles. Strapped to each circle is a living human coated entirely from neck to toe in SCP-610, but having an exposed head which appears uninfected. These human captives scream as the bell continues to toll and the circle moves to the ground. The team begins to move toward one to investigate when an unknown creature cries from outside the building, prompting them to take cover in the shadows near the pulpit. Light sources are extinguished, pitching the entire area into darkness. Night vision is left off to avoid revealing the team's location. Sounds continue to emit from outside the church, drawing closer but lower than the frantic screams of their captive humans. At least one noticed the team as the captive humans often call out to be saved. From the entrance of the church, a candle lights on the side of the doorway, then another on the other side. A figure is seen holding a small torch moving back and forth between the series of candles to light the doorway. The flame is then applied to a rope coated in SCP-610, which quickly ignites and spreads up to a peculiar chandelier system at the church entrance. The light from this system illuminates most of the crosses but does not reach the team's hiding place. Those captive who appear in the light do not show standard signs of the beige-colored SCP-610 infection, but instead are wrapped in red variant of it, which shows signs of constant motion rippling across itself in waves. From outside the church, a flood of SCP-610 infected shamble quickly into the area, ignoring the man who lit the candles and stands in the middle of the room. They proceed to the captives on the wooden circles and begin to pull at the red SCP-610 masses, resulting in further screams and cries. From what can be gathered from the return video feed, the red SCP seems to be connected to the captives and is using them as a source of sustenance that it then uses to grow and feed the normal SCP-610 infected. Overly zealous infected tear at the red mass too hard, which results in pulling skin and tissue from human captives beneath. This exposed area is quickly covered over by the red mass, which then grows in size. Feeding like this continues for approximately 6 minutes, at which time the candlebearer figure sounds a gong and all infected entities move to the pews. There are several more creatures than seats, but none move past the frontmost pew. The figure who sounded the gong does not move, spontaneously collapsing as if made of hollow clay. From the pulpit area, activity noticed as a pillar of SCP-610 flesh rises through the hole and extends, directing itself towards the gathered creatures. No sound is heard and no motion is recorded once the pillar stops moving. This silent period persists for about 10 minutes without even the human captives making a sound. Having fallen silent at the unknown point, the pillar of SCP-610 retracts back into the hole it emerged from without any warning, prompting the departure of the infected from the building. The candles remain lit and the team emerges after all the infected appear to have left the area. The descended captives remain at ground level as well, all screaming, seeming to have ceased, but still show signs of life with heavy breathing and movement. Upon departure from the area, camera feeds from all 3 members become erratic. Camera 1 ceases transmitting completely, camera 2 shoots straight up in the air for several meters, and camera 3 captures the member of camera 2 being flung by a tendril that emerges out of the ground itself, swinging them out of sight onto the other side of the ruins. Camera 1's feed is restored and displays camera 3's owner running briefly in the direction of the lost team member, only to turn and run back as SCP-610 infected pour from between the buildings. Combat ensues between the 2 members and the onrushing infected using assault rifles and personal flame units, successfully driving back enough of the horde to make an escape toward the buggy. Passing by a building, camera 1's owner is ambushed by a figure resembling the figure who was actually in the church lighting candles, wielding a large crop scythe. Camera 3's owner continues without pause towards the buggy location. However, the buggy is found to be half absorbed by SCP-610 mass covering the floor. While turning to find another way to escape, camera 3's owner turns to find the same figure with a scythe approaching, weapon raised. 2 shots are fired and the camera feed ends. So let's discuss a few things about SCP-610 and the comments I got. Why not nuke this creature into oblivion? Well, for a couple of reasons. The nature of this infection is delicate and not fully understood. Considering it got a foothold in the area without the knowledge of humans for quite a while, it's not clear if this is airborne, waterborne, or only just touch. As such, nuclear weapons may create a hellfire to rain down on them, but this could just blast it out to other areas, which will send the infection even further, thus contaminating the area and even causing some particles to float high into the atmosphere, spreading it to maybe even other countries or even larger population centers. As you can see, this creature exists in the tunnels well below the Earth too. The nuclear weapons dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki would not be strong enough to penetrate that much ground depth, and even still, using a large nuclear weapon would irradiate the area, causing a panic in Russia and around the world, which would make everyone aware of what's happening out there. Conspiracy theory or no, large amounts of humans would have to be moved away from the weapon strike, and it may not even fully work. Radiation is not known to affect SCP-610, so irradiating the area might just cause the creature to retain its foothold while keeping humans out. Another option was proposed of sending in flamethrowers. Again, this is not really that viable of an option. The cave systems are extensive and there is no telling how far this infection spreads. Due to this, you could send an army down there and only end up feeding more people into the 610 horde. And considering this creature is quite smart, this may be exactly what it wants. Not to mention, just some basic chemistry, using flamethrowers inside of a cave system burns up oxygen, which could lead to death of more people actually down there as they suffocate, making it easy pickings for SCP-610. 610 is also seemingly a hive mind. A hive mind intelligence can progress well beyond humanity's ability to control it, as its many minds working together in perfect unison, whereas humans must rely on physical communication, which can cause conflicting ideas to emerge, stunting progress. As such, should the creature advance beyond the borders it has now, it has the potential of being that which may overwhelm humanity, leading to our extinction, as well as every other living creature on Earth's extinction. Hive minds must be approached in a methodical and consistent way as such. Nuclear weapons, while seemingly humanity's ultimate trump card, might not do anything against the hive mind, as it could be planning on it to spread its influence. Unfortunately, no source point was ever located to this day. L6 has never been released except to the highest echelons of the Foundation, so we may never actually know what was the true focal point which could be attacked and destroyed. As we move further into the discussion of 610, it's apparent that this is really just part of a larger issue. A cult has been formed and 610 may just be a bioweapon, but we will continue that line later on in the series. So thank you guys for watching. I hope everyone enjoyed. Subbing and liking are a great way to support the channel if you feel inclined to do so. I will drop my Twitter, Patreon, Discord, and merchandise links in the description if anyone is interested in that, and I want to shout out a few of my patrons. Huge thank you to It's Not a Spoon, Joseph Givens, Laffy No Skill, Artem Chornage, and The Lone Titan. As for the rest of my patrons, you are also very much appreciated, and thank you for helping this channel continue to grow and thrive. Alright, so that does it for me. I hope everyone enjoyed, and I will see y'all in the next one.